Okay, so it's March 25th, 1982. The setting is the World Mission Center in New York.
Right.
If you look outside, the Cold War it's freezing relations between East and West.
Mm.
The Cultural Revolution of the 60s and 70s has sort of morphed into the materialism of the 80s.
Mm.
And inside this building, a man is standing before a crowded room, delivering a speech that, on the surface, sounds like it's about a holiday.
But if you were actually standing in that room, you would realize pretty quickly this wasn't about balloons or cards or a nice brunch.
No.
The speaker is Myung, founder of the Unification Church. The speech is titled The Divine Call of True Parents' Day.
And to really get this document, the first thing we have to do, I think, is just completely discard our modern secular idea of what a holiday is.
That's it, exactly.
That's the first thing that jumped out at me. You know, when we hear Parents' Day, it implies gratitude, maybe some gifts. It feels light.
Sure.
But the atmosphere in this text is incredibly heavy. It feels urgent, almost desperate.
It is urgent, and that is really the mission of this deep dive. We aren't here to debate the theology or, take sides. We're here to decode the worldview. We want to understand how the speaker looks at 1982 America with its family breakdown, the drug culture, the looming threat of Soviet communism.
And just weaves it all together.
And weaves it all into a single high-stakes narrative.
It's a narrative where the stakes are absolute. I mean, the language here, it isn't metaphorical. He's talking about God's actual physical pain.
Yes.
And the potential for global suicide.
Exactly. To the people in that room, this wasn't just a Sunday sermon. It was a military briefing. And to understand the orders being given, you have to understand the map they're looking at.
So let's start with the title itself, Parents' Day. In the text, he makes a distinction that I found really jarring. He basically says that for the rest of the world, celebrating a holiday is, well, he frames it as almost an insult to God.
It's worse than an insult. He argues it's a tragedy.
Why? Why is celebration a bad thing in this context?
It brings us to the concept of restoration, which is really the engine that drives this entire speech.
Okay.
You have to understand that in this worldview, history as we know it, human history, is viewed as a mistake. It's a deviation from the plan.
And this goes back to the concept of the fall.
Right. The source material leans heavily on the Genesis narrative, but with a specific twist. The argument is that Adam and Eve were meant to establish a perfect, God-centered family.
A true family.
A true family. They didn't. They fell. So everything that happened after that, civilizations, empires, regular families, it's all built on a broken foundation.
So when he sees people celebrating a birthday or a national holiday like the 4th of July, he's not thinking, oh, they're having fun.
No. He's thinking they are celebrating in a burning building. He explicitly says that these secular celebrations pierce God's heart.
Wow.
And listen to the logic here. He says that every time a child is born or a couple gets married outside of this specific restored tradition he's preaching, it just adds to God's burden.
That is a bleak image. I have the quote here. God sees another soul to be restored. One more problem that has been added to his burden.
See,
It turns the joy of new life into a cosmic to-do list.
it completely inverts the emotional baseline. If you buy into this premise, then happiness, as the world defines it, is actually ignorance.
Right.
The divine call of this Parents' Day isn't to have a party, it's to establish a model that reverses that original tragedy. It's about relieving God's sorrow, not gratifying human desires.
To explain how we got here, to this point of sorrow, he uses this analogy of the seasons. I found this helpful to visualize his timeline, but it's also quite fatalistic.
It's a crucial metaphor because it explains why he felt such immense pressure, specifically in 1982.
Okay.
He views history as agricultural. Spring was the sowing season, the beginning of humanity. But because of the fall, humanity sowed the wrong seed.
The wrong seed.
He calls it illicit love.
So a bad seed in the spring meant a corrupted growing season in the summer.
Precisely. And that brings us to his present day. He argues that the era they are living in, the 1980s, is the autumn of history.
The harvest.
Autumn is the harvest. And the rule of nature is that you harvest what you planted. So if you planted a bad seed, autumn is when you have to eat the rotten fruit.
And he calls this harvest time the last days. Now, usually when we see last days in a religious text, we think apocalypse.
Fire and brimstone, yeah.
But reading this, he seems to be defining it more sociologically.
That's a great observation. He isn't talking about the planet exploding, at least not yet. He defines the last days as a psychological and social inversion.
An inversion.
The source gives a definition that really sticks with you. The last days are the time when the things God abhors most have become the things that people love the most.
That's fascinating. So it's not about the destruction of matter, it's about the destruction of values.
It's about a total misalignment between creator and creation, and he points the finger directly at the United States.
He really doesn't pull punches on America. You have to remember, in 1982, a lot of people viewed America as the moral leader of the free world, standing up to the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
But he calls the country spiritually paralyzed.
He sees the cultural landscape of the early 80s, what he calls free sex, the drug culture, the rising divorce rates. He sees these not just as social trends.
Right.
He sees them as the fruit of fallen love. He says the most precious thing, love, is the most mixed up and perverted thing.
So in his view, America is the target of God's wrath because it was supposed to be the champion of God, and instead it's becoming the playground of this illicit love.
Exactly. There's a line where he describes Satan taunting God. It's very dramatic.
Yeah.
So I saw that he paints a picture of the devil basically laughing at God, saying, look at your people. They are my instruments now, billions of them.
So that reinforces that idea of the last days. It's a spiritual crisis where the enemy is winning the culture war. Okay, so if the world is a mess, and America is paralyzed, and God is grieving, where does that leave the people sitting in the room? They're a small group, often marginalized, widely criticized.
It leaves them as the resistance. And this leads to what I think is the most psychologically sophisticated part of the text, the way he reframes persecution.
The gold medal concept. This really stood out to me as a mechanism for resilience.
Yes. Think about the reality for a member of this movement in 1982. They're being called Moonies.
A derogatory term.
Right. They're often estranged from their families. They spend days selling flowers or peanuts on the street, getting doors slammed in their faces. That is a hard psychological space to live in.
And he addresses it head on. He asks them, why are we treated like criminals? He doesn't gaslight them or pretend it's not happening.
No, he acknowledges the pain, but then he performs this rhetorical judo move. He says, every time you hear that accusation, from God's point of view, you are winning a medal.
It's a brilliant defense mechanism.
Yeah.
If the world has fallen, if we're in that rotten autumn harvest,
then being opposed by that world isn't a bad thing.
it's proof you're doing something right.
Exactly. If the world loved you, you'd be part of the problem. He says, you are greedy for medals. He gamifies the rejection.
It creates a closed loop of validation.
Totally.
Yeah.
If people accept you, great, you're witnessing to them. If people reject you, great, you're earning a gold medal from God. There's no scenario where you lose self-worth.
He uses imagery here that I found very evocative. He talks about silent arrows. He says, people of all religions and all countries are firing arrows at me.
Arrows can fly silently and pierce your heart when you aren't aware of them. It suggests a constant, invisible spiritual assault. But again, he flips it. He claims he deliberately walks where the arrows are thickest.
Because that's where God is.
Because that's where the battle is.
Yeah.
He tells his followers that their hardship isn't a sign that they made a bad life choice.
No.
It's a sign of their honorable status. He's telling them, you aren't victims, you are soldiers on the front line. It turns suffering into status.
So we have the diagnosis. The world is ending, psychologically. We have the identity. We are the persecuted heroes. But what's the actual plan?
Right.
A lot of speeches stop at the complaint. He seems to have a very specific strategy with terms like home church and indemnity.
This is where we get into the mechanics of his solution. He uses this metaphor, laying the red carpet.
For preparation.
For preparation. He asks, if the world is ending, how can we save mankind? He argues that God needs a dwelling place on earth. Right now, God is essentially homeless because the world is enemy territory.
So the fundraising, the witnessing, it's not just about money or numbers.
In this narrative, every person they convert or every dollar they raise is like weaving another inch of that red carpet for God to land on. And the main mechanism for this is home church.
Okay, can we unpack home church? Because to a layperson, that sounds like a Bible study in a living room.
This sounds small.
Yeah, but he attaches so much more weight to it.
He does. He connects it to the history of warfare. He argues that the worst wars in history started as tribal conflicts, family against family.
So to fix the macro, you have to fix the micro.
Exactly, fix the tribe. Home church is his strategy of assigning members to specific small areas, usually 360 homes, to serve and indemnify that area.
Indemnify. That's a key technical term here. It means to pay a debt, right?
In this theological context, yes. It means making reparations for the sins of the past through service and sacrifice in the present. Think of it like a cosmic balance sheet.
Yeah.
History has accumulated this massive debt of sin. The home church member goes into a neighborhood, serves the people, takes on their burdens, and by doing so, pays off that debt, allowing God to claim that territory.
So they're essentially trying to undo thousands of years of tribal conflict by, what, sweeping driveways and visiting neighbors?
That is the logic. Small conditions on earth set up big changes in heaven, and this idea of resolving conflict brings us to his views on race. This is where the speech gets very specific and honestly quite complex. He brings up a theory involving Noah's sons.
Yeah, I had to read this section twice. Shem, Ham, and Japheth. How is he using these biblical figures?
It's a typology. In his framework, they aren't just people, they represent the three major racial blocs and their historical roles.
Okay.
He posits that Shem represents the yellow race, so Asian, Ham represents the black race, and Japheth represents the white race, what he calls Occidentals.
And his argument isn't just, we should all get along.
No.
He frames racial harmony as a strategic countermove to communism.
This is where the theology smashes right into the geopolitics of 1982. He explicitly claims that communism is behind the scenes pushing for global racial conflict.
He believes the Soviets were using racial tension to destabilize the West.
Yes. So in his mind, racial harmony isn't just a nice social goal, it's a geopolitical necessity.
He says white people must love black people and both must love yellow people.
He calls it a mandate. He warns that if this doesn't happen, a racial war is inevitable. He says, I'm determined to prevent racial war.
So he sees his movement, which was famous for its mass weddings between people of different races, as the antidote.
The antidote to this communist strategy.
It's fascinating how he positions himself here, not just a religious leader, but as the ultimate patriot.
The true patriot.
Yeah.
He critiques other churches for being too focused on their own individual salvation, just getting to heaven.
Right.
He claims he loves America more than Americans do because he is trying to save it from this internal rot. He even brings up his 1965 tour where he drove to every single U.S. state in 40 days.
To dedicate holy grounds.
That was the red carpet again.
Laying the groundwork.
Exactly. He argues that he physically claimed the territory for God planting a flag, essentially, and now the members have to hold that ground through this home church work.
So the stakes couldn't be higher. The strategy is set.
Yeah.
And that leads us to the conclusion of the speech, which it felt like an ultimatum.
It was a challenge, a very stark one. He essentially tells the room, if you aren't serious, get out. He says, those who feel that they love me but that this life is just too difficult for them, please stand up. You can go out the door now.
He literally points to the door.
He wants to filter the group. He says he only wants people who will be like rocks. He's demanding total commitment, and this leads to a radical redefinition of love.
This part really stood out. He tells them to love their country as much as you love your fiancé.
It's a hierarchy of love that puts the mission above everything personal. He says the blessing, their term for marriage, isn't for the individual's happiness.
Right.
He asks, what kind of blessing do you want when this nation and world are crumbling?
Basically, you don't have the right to be happy until the world is saved.
Your marriage, your children, your daily life, it's all a tool for the salvation of the nation and posterity. He points to himself as the proof of concept, saying he sacrificed his own family's comfort for the nation and the nation for the world.
And he's demanding that they replicate his life.
He is. He ends with a prediction, though. He talks about an atomic bomb.
But given the context, I assume he doesn't mean a nuclear weapon.
No. He calls it the atomic bomb of conscience.
Which means what, exactly?
It's his vision of victory. He predicts that eventually the human conscience will explode like a bomb when people taste true love. He believes that once the world sees this model family structure they are building, this home church, this racial unity, the truth will just be undeniable. It's a very optimistic end to a very dark diagnosis.
So let's synthesize this. We started with a holiday that isn't a holiday. It's a reversal of history.
Right.
We moved through a diagnosis of America as a dying patient, infected by the last days. We saw a reframing of persecution where insults become gold medals. And finally, we ended with a demand for a life where you love your mission more than your own happiness.
It is a comprehensive, self-sealing worldview. It answers every question. Where did I come from? Why is the world bad? What can I do about it? And how do I know I'm right?
And the answer to that last one, how do I know I'm right, is simply because the world hates us.
That is the keystone holding the arch together.
It really creates a fortress for the mind. If you accept the premises, everything else follows logically. Even the suffering makes sense.
Especially the suffering.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the one thing you want the listener to take away from this?
I keep coming back to that gold medal concept. The speaker argues that true greatness is defined by being a target of the world's opposition. That if you're hitting resistance, it's because you're swimming upstream against a fallen world.
It's a powerful idea.
It is, and it raises a really uncomfortable question for all of us. Regardless of what we believe, we live in a very polarized world right now.
We do?
We often wear criticism like a badge of honor. We think, if they are attacking me, I must be telling the truth.
But that's not always true.
No. Sometimes people attack you because you're wrong. The challenge this text leaves us with is, how do we differentiate? How do we know when we are being persecuted for righteousness and when we are just being criticized for being mistaken? In this speech, there is no difference. But in the real world, knowing that difference is everything.
A provocative thought to end on. Just because you have enemies doesn't mean you're a hero. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the 1982 Divine Call. We'll see you next time.